It was raining the morning everything changed. That quiet kind of rain that makes the world sound softer, almost kind. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt, how lucky I was to have someone waiting for me at home. I didn't know that was the last normal morning of my life. David left early for work. He kissed my forehead like always, a half-awake gesture, more habit than passion. I watched him tie his tie in front of the mirror. Blue, the same tie he wore on the day we met. I smiled at him and said, "Don't forget dinner tonight." He smiled back. I wouldn't miss it for the world. That night, he never came back. The call came just after 7. A woman's voice, shaky, urgent, said David had been in a car accident. My legs gave out before my mind even processed the words. I remember the smell of coffee burning on the stove, the ticking of the kitchen clock. The world kept moving, even while mine collapsed. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. Only the flashing red lights reflected in puddles, my own hands trembling on the steering wheel, and the thought that I'd never told him how much I still loved him. Not really. Not lately. When I arrived, everything was chaos. Machines beeping, strangers running past, names being shouted. I kept saying, "I'm his wife, I'm his wife," like a password that would unlock the door to his room. Finally, a nurse took me aside. Her face was calm in a way that scared me. She said she would take me to him, but first, she whispered something that didn't make sense. "You're not his wife." I laughed. At first, I thought she'd made a mistake. Maybe she had me confused with someone else. But then she handed me a small plastic bag. Inside it was a wedding ring. It wasn't mine. The inscription inside read, "Forever, L+D." I stared at it, waiting for the world to correct itself, for someone to rush in and explain the mix-up. But no one did. The nurse just looked at me with that kind of pity you never forget. And right there, in that white hallway that smelled like disinfectant and rainwater, my heart broke. Not from the accident, but from the truth whispering behind her words. If you've ever had your whole world collapse in a single breath, like this video, so I know I'm not the only one who's been there. I sat in the hospital corridor for hours, clutching that plastic bag as if it held my entire life inside. I could barely breathe. My fingers kept tracing the edge of the ring, smaller than mine, worn smoother, as if someone had loved it longer. I tried to tell myself it was all a mistake. Maybe the nurse had confused patients. Maybe the ring belonged to someone else. But the voice in my head, that quiet, cruel one that only comes when you're alone, whispered, "You already know, Emily." They wouldn't let me see him right away. "Family first," the doctor said. His tone was gentle, almost rehearsed. "His wife is with him now." Wife. The word hit me like glass shattering inside my chest. I wanted to scream that I was his wife, that I cooked him breakfast, washed his shirts, celebrated anniversaries, that there was no one else. But my mouth wouldn't open. I just stood there, staring at the closed door at the end of the hallway, the one with his name taped on it, and knowing that on the other side was my life unraveling. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. I couldn't move. I couldn't leave. I kept thinking about the tie he wore this morning, the one I loved because it reminded me of the day we met. I imagined it soaked in blood, and my chest tightened. When the nurse finally came back, her eyes softened. "He's still unconscious," she said quietly. "But his wife will update you when she can." That word again. It didn't even sound real anymore. I got up, numb, and followed her gaze toward the ICU window. And that's when I saw her. A woman about my age, standing beside David's bed, holding his hand. She wore a simple gold ring, the same ring in the bag I still held. The room swayed, and I thought I might faint. For a moment, I hated her. I hated David. I even hated myself for not knowing. But mostly, I felt hollow, like the world had emptied itself out, leaving me behind. The nurse touched my arm. "Are you all right?" she asked. No, I wasn't. I wasn't anything anymore. Tell me in the comments, have you ever looked at someone you loved and realized you never truly knew them at all? I don't remember driving home. The streets blurred, headlights, rain, people who still had purpose. I kept repeating the nurse's words in my head until they stopped sounding like words at all. "You're not his wife." They became a rhythm, a heartbeat that wasn't mine. When I finally stepped inside our apartment, the air smelled like him. Coffee, cedar soap, the faint trace of his cologne. Everything looked normal, almost unchanged. But suddenly, it all felt wrong. Like walking through someone else's house built exactly like yours. His jacket still hung by the door. His shoes were lined up perfectly, as always. I touched them, then pulled my hand back, like they might burn me. On the kitchen table sat 2 coffee mugs, one half full, with his favorite chipped handle. I remembered our mornings together, the easy jokes, the soft silences. I used to think love lived in those small details. Now, every detail looked like a lie. I wandered into our bedroom, the bed still unmade from the morning. My pillow smelled like him. I sat down on his side and stared at his nightstand. There, under a pile of receipts, was his old phone. The one he said was broken after dropping it in water months ago. It wasn't broken. My hands were shaking when I turned it on. The battery was nearly dead, but the screen lit up long enough for me to see a name: Lydia. There were messages, dozens of them, photos, voice notes. One popped up right then, as if fate wanted me to bleed a little more. "Heard about the accident. I'm on my way, my love. Hold on for me, L." My throat closed. The edges of my vision went dark. Everything I'd built with David, 7 years, every kiss, every promise, belonged to someone else too. I sank to the floor, clutching the phone to my chest like it was a part of him. Maybe it was. Maybe that's why it hurt so much. Because it was proof he had a whole other world I was never meant to see. I stayed like that until sunrise, just the sound of rain on the window and my heart breaking over and over again. Follow my story, because the hardest part is still to come. By the time I went back to the hospital, 2 days had passed. 2 days without sleep, without food. Just questions looping in my head until they sounded like prayers. I told myself I needed answers. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I just needed someone to say it out loud so I could finally break. The nurse at the desk recognized me. She didn't ask who I was this time. Maybe she could see it on my face, the hollow that grief leaves behind. "He's awake now," she whispered, almost kindly. For a moment, my heart leapt. He's alive. But then it sank again just as fast. Because alive didn't mean mine. When I reached the corridor outside his room, I saw her before she saw me. Lydia. She was standing beside his bed, her hand resting over his chest, gently, like someone who had done it 1,000 times before. She looked calm, exhausted, but calm. Love has a way of softening faces. I saw it in hers. I waited at the doorway, frozen, invisible. I wanted to scream, to ask her who she thought she was, but I couldn't even breathe. All I could do was watch the life that used to be mine play out in front of me. Then she looked up. Our eyes met. For a long moment, neither of us moved. She didn't look shocked, not even confused. Just, sorry. Sorry in that wordless way you feel when you both know something unspeakable. She came closer, silent steps on the tile floor. I could see the ring now, gold, simple, engraved with Forever, L plus D. She folded her hands and said quietly, "You must be Emily." My name. Hearing it from her mouth made it real. Made me real again. even if only as the lie in someone else's story. I didn't know, I said. My voice cracked. It didn't sound like mine. I swear I didn't. I know, she whispered. And that was worse somehow. That she knew. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. He told me you were a friend from work. That you were helping him put his life back together. I couldn't speak. My throat burned with 100 possible questions, but none fit into words. Then from the hospital bed, I heard it, my name. Weak, slurred, his voice. Emily? My knees almost gave out. Lydia stepped aside. David's eyes fluttered open. And all I could think was, who am I to him now? If you've ever stood face to face with the person who shattered your world, like this moment, so I know hearts like ours still keep beating after the fall. He looked smaller lying there, wrapped in blankets and wires. The sound of the monitor kept a rhythm, a faint beep that felt too calm for what was happening inside me. I hesitated at the door, torn between running toward him and running away forever. Lydia had slipped out quietly. Now it was just us. The man I thought was my husband, and me, the woman who no longer knew who she was. Emily, he whispered again. His voice was rough, as if the accident had taken part of it away. You're here. I nodded, step by step approaching his bed. Of course I'm here, I said softly. Then the words lost their shape halfway out. But, am I supposed to be? He closed his eyes. His hand twitched, maybe reaching for mine, maybe flinching from what he knew was coming. I never meant to hurt you, he said. There it was. The sentence people say when they've destroyed everything. I never meant to hurt you. Translation. I chose myself, every single time. I wanted to yell, but tears came instead. Why, David? Why didn't you just tell me? I thought I could fix it, he murmured. I thought I could have both worlds until I figured it out. Both worlds. His words sliced through me like glass. You mean both wives? He turned his face away. The monitor beeped faster. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I snapped, surprising both of us with the sound of my own anger. You promised me a life, David. You made me believe in us. You let me wear your ring. Silence. Just the machines and the taste of grief in the air. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were trembling with something close to shame. You were my happiness, Emily, he whispered, even if it was borrowed. Borrowed. The words settled heavy in my stomach, like everything between us had been rented. Time, love, touch. None of it ever mine to keep. I couldn't answer. I just stood there, watching the man I loved fade into someone else. The kind of stranger you can never unsee. I took a step back toward the door. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't breathe the same air as his truth anymore. Share this with someone who's ever loved the wrong person, hoping love alone would make it right. Maybe they'll understand what it costs. I don't remember walking out of that hospital. One moment I was looking at David. The next I was outside under the cold rain again. It smelled like asphalt and endings. The world felt muted, traffic moving, people laughing on sidewalks, a couple arguing in the distance. Ordinary life. And I hated it for being ordinary when mine had just exploded. Back home, I dropped my phone on the couch and sank to the floor. The silence inside the apartment was unbearable. Everywhere I looked, there were traces of him. His mug, his jacket, the book he never finished. It was like living inside a photograph of a life that had been edited without my permission. I cried until my body ached. Not those movie tears, but the kind that leave you gasping, shaking, empty. I kept whispering the same sentence into the quiet. He chose someone else. But it wasn't just betrayal that haunted me. It was the realization that maybe I had been complicit. That I ignored the signs because loving him felt easier than asking questions that could destroy us. Maybe I never wanted the truth until it arrived uninvited. At some point, I must have fallen asleep on the floor. When I woke, the rain had stopped. The room was gray with morning. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Emily, it's Lydia. Can we talk?" I stared at her name on the screen, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Part of me wanted to delete it, to pretend it never came. But another part, the broken, curious part, needed to hear more. Needed to understand the woman who lived the version of my life that wasn't mine. I typed back before I could stop myself. When and where? And when her reply came, calm and simple. "Tomorrow, at the cafe across from the hospital." I knew I wasn't done breaking yet. Follow my story. Because meeting her was only the beginning of everything I thought I could never survive. I almost didn't go. I sat in the car outside the cafe for 15 minutes, watching the raindrops chase each other down the windshield, trying to convince myself this wasn't a good idea. What could we possibly say to each other? She had what I lost. Or maybe I thought neither of us ever truly had him. When I finally went inside, she was already there. Lydia. No makeup, hair tied back, hands wrapped around a coffee cup she hadn't touched. She looked tired. Not glamorous, not triumphant. Just human. And that somehow made it worse. Our eyes met, and for a second I saw my own exhaustion reflected in hers. She gave a small nod, half smile, the kind you give at a funeral when you have no words left. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. I didn't either. I sat across from her. The hum of the espresso machine filled the pauses between us. "You've probably asked yourself the same things I did," she continued, voice trembling. "When it started, why he did it. Whether any of it was real." I swallowed hard. "Was it?" She blinked, took a slow breath. "For me it was. For him, I think. It was escape. You were where he went to feel like someone else. That hurt more than anger could. Escape." I realized she wasn't my enemy. She was another room in the same burning house. "I thought he loved me," I whispered. "He did," she said, and somehow that was the cruelest truth of all. We sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that doesn't push you away but holds all the things words can't carry. I watched her trace her finger along the rim of her cup, the gold of her wedding ring catching the light. Then she pulled it off and placed it on the table between us. "I don't want it anymore," she said. "Maybe you should have it. You cared for him when I couldn't." I stared at the ring, that circle of gold that connected us both to the same lie. And for the first time, I saw it differently. Not as a symbol of love, but of chains. "I don't want it either," I said softly. "Maybe it's time both of us let him go." Outside, the rain started again, thin, soft, and endless. Lydia smiled weakly. "You're stronger than you think, Emily." I wanted to believe her. But as I watched her walk away, I saw something I hadn't expected. A folded envelope she'd left behind, with my name written in David's handwriting. Tell me in the comments, would you open that letter or leave it sealed forever? I stared at the envelope for hours before opening it. It sat on my kitchen table like a sleeping animal I was afraid to wake. His handwriting, looping and familiar, felt almost like his voice whispering through paper. Part of me wanted to burn it. Another part needed it like oxygen. I think what we crave after betrayal isn't truth. It's proof that what we felt was real at least once. When I finally tore it open, the smell of ink and paper hit me, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. The first line broke me before I reached the second. "Emily, if you're reading this, you already know more than I had the courage to tell you." I sank into the chair, heart pounding so loud it drowned the rain outside. "You were never a mistake. I need you to believe that. I met you after my marriage had already ended in everything but name. Lydia and I were ghosts living in the same house. She knew it. I knew it. But I didn't know how to end it without breaking the last piece of the life I used to believe in. Then you came along, and suddenly, I could breathe again. You were sunlight after months of stale air. I told myself it didn't count as betrayal because my heart had already left. But that's the lie that built all the others. I wiped my face with the back of my sleeve, trembling. I tried to fix things, both lives, both loves. But one lie always needed another to survive. Every version of me depended on hiding the truth from both of you. I wanted to protect everyone, but all I did was destroy the only people who ever truly cared for me. If I don't wake up from this, please believe me when I say this. What I felt for you was real. It just wasn't honest. And there's a difference. I see that now. Let me go, Emily. Not for me. For you. Don't carry me like a wound you keep reopening just to prove you still feel something. Live. Please. No signature. Just my name again, at the end, like a whisper fading into white paper. Emily. I folded the letter back carefully, even though my fingers shook. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, sorrow, pity, exhaustion. Maybe all of them. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. I went to the window and watched the rain trail down the glass. For the first time in weeks, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed. He was gone from my story, but maybe, finally, so was the lie. If you've ever had to close a door that still smelled like someone you loved, follow my story, because learning to live after goodbye is the hardest part. The hospital smelled the same, antiseptic and rain. I stood at the entrance for a long time before walking in, the letter still folded in my coat pocket, soft from being read too many times. I wasn't sure why I came. Maybe to say goodbye. Maybe to prove to myself that I could. David was sitting up this time, pale but awake. When he saw me, guilt flickered in his eyes like a reflex. But there was something else too. Relief, maybe, or resignation. Emily, he said quietly. You came. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. Just once more. He looked like he wanted to reach for my hand, but he didn't. The silence between us was heavier than any words could be. After everything, I think we both knew there was nothing left to explain. I got your letter, I said finally. He nodded, eyes lowering. I meant every word. I know. My voice cracked, not from anger, but from the bittersweet clarity of it all. You loved me the best way a broken person could, but love isn't supposed to need lies to survive. He looked up then, and for the first time, I saw him without the layers. No charm, no defense, just a man drowning in his own decisions. I ruined you. I shook my head. No, you revealed me. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I built my life around your love, and when it collapsed, I learned who I was underneath it. That's not ruin. It's revelation. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The monitor beeped softly, steady, unbothered. I don't expect forgiveness, he whispered. I'm not here to give it, I said. I'm here to say goodbye, not to you, but to the version of me who thought love meant losing myself. I placed the letter on the table beside his bed. He looked at it, then at me, and nodded once. It was enough. When I left the room, I didn't look back. The air outside felt lighter somehow, like the world had been waiting for me to make that choice. On the sidewalk, the sun was breaking through the clouds for the first time in weeks. I let it touch my face, warm, forgiving. Share this with someone who's still trapped in a love they need to outgrow. Maybe it'll remind them that letting go isn't failure, it's freedom. It's strange how silence changes after you heal. It used to scare me, felt like a reminder of everything I lost. But now, Silence feels like space, like possibility. It's been 6 months since that day at the hospital. Sometimes I still wake expecting to feel David's warmth beside me. Old habits die slowly. But the difference is this: I no longer reach for him. I reach for me. I moved out of the apartment. It took me weeks to pack, every object holding a memory, and every memory asking if I was ready to let go. I cried over things that didn't deserve tears: a mug, a photograph, a shirt I'd once borrowed. But little by little, the boxes filled, and the weight lifted. I live by the ocean now. The mornings smell like salt and fresh starts. I take long walks, coffee in hand, and watch the tide wash away footprints that were there a moment before. There's something healing about watching the world erase itself and begin again. Sometimes I read his letter, not out of sadness, but gratitude. Because in his terrible honesty, he gave me the one thing he never meant to: closure. I'm no longer the woman defined by his lies. I'm the woman who survived them. Last night, I caught my reflection in the window, candlelight flickering around me. For the first time, I didn't see grief in my eyes. I saw calm, maybe even strength. And for the first time since it all began, I whispered my own name out loud, just to hear how it sounded when it didn't tremble. Emily. It felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. If you've ever rebuilt yourself from pieces someone else left behind, like this video, so I know, we made it through, together.